One of the great things about all of this movement in order to eradicate human trafficking or sex trafficking is that people are becoming really aware of the problem. And you can't solve anything until you're aware of the problem, right? So it's great. What needs to continue to happen, though, is that we have to deal with the root cause of human trafficking. So human trafficking is caused by all of these differences and rationalizations, but at its core, sexual violence is what impacts the world. It's a form of sexual violence that we're seeing. So until we can start to make the connection to why there's so much sexual violence in the world and what rationalizations are happening inside of people, inside of hearts, inside of our communities, that allow sexual assault or incest or intimate partner sexual abuse or domestic violence to happen, we're not really going to be able to eradicate sex trafficking. It starts not simply by somebody saying, oh, well, I'm just going to buy another human being, but it starts with a belief system that it's okay to do that. And when we look back in history, we can see a lot of similarities between American history and the African slave trade with the sex trade that's currently happening in America right now. Because what happens is people are making rationalizations of why something is okay. And before you know it, you have millions of people that are victim to these rationalizations that are happening. One of the first things that people do is they create a difference between not only ourselves and victim survivors of human trafficking, but also within human trafficking, right? So we tend to look at women who are being prostituted very differently than we look at women who are kidnapped and brought over. We look at focusing most of our attention and all of our resources on rescuing women who have been brought across the country or brought overseas or are being trafficked throughout the interstate lines as the primary victims that we need to be paying attention to. Because when we look at women who are being prostituted, we tend to think of them as individuals who are making this choice and that's what they want to do. And by doing it, it keeps us from actually paying attention to the reality of how pervasive human trafficking is throughout the entire world, in that it is concealed through the secondary rationalization of choice. That some people actually choose this line of work, they like doing it, and so they do that because it's an easy buck to make. And a lot of times you'll hear that said if somebody says, well, why do you go to strip clubs? Or, why do you always have to have strippers at bachelor parties? And people will rationalize it by saying, well, because they like doing it, they're going to be doing it, they're paying for their college, so really I'm just helping pay for somebody's graduation, present or whatever it is. And the last thing that we do is we start to suggest that they actually enjoy doing it. And we build up this idea that some women just really enjoy having sex. And what else are they going to do but charge men in order to have sex? And so we set up all of these different belief systems that allow us to remove having any sort of responsibility. We don't have to deal with women who are being prostituted because they're choosing this life, this work that they want to do. So we're only going to pay attention to people who are kidnapped. And we don't really have to deal with any aspect of sexual exploitation because there's choice that's there and there's enjoyment in there. And America is all about freedom of choice. And so that is how we sort of conceal it and stop paying attention to the reality that all victims and anybody who's put in a situation where they have to sell their body for their livelihood, for food or for shelter or for safety, is in fact a victim of sexual exploitation and sex trafficking and or being prostituted by another individual.